Call to order the June 23rd, 2022 Louisville Planning Commission meeting with a roll call, please.
Before we begin, can I ask that the commissioners attending via Zoom confirm that we can hear them and they can hear us? Jeff, we did, thank you.
Yep, I can hear you, and yeah,
Excellent.
hopefully you can hear me.
Okay, we do not have Commissioner Howe yet.
Okay.
Let's see.
There we go. Whoops. All right.
Yes.
We can go ahead. I mean, you have a
I mean,
quorum,
we
so it's
technically
up to you.
have a quorum. Let's see. Okay. Just, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Chair Brown Eyes.
Here.
Commissioner Osterman. Commissioner Howe. Commissioner Krantz.
Here.
Commissioner Deal. Commissioner Moline.
Here.
Commissioner Hefner.
Here.
Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve this evening's agenda. Maybe start
So
with
moved.
a second.
Second.
Motion carry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll also look at the approval for the minutes of April 14th, 2022. Motion to approve.
Before we do that, Commissioner Howe says he's missing a Zoom invite. I wonder if somebody could send him one.
Okay, thank you. Let's do it. Reset. We just sent it again.
Okay, great. We'll see what happens over here, but
In that case, I'll move for approval of the minutes from the April 14th meeting.
I will second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. If there's anybody here who would like to speak to an item that's not on this evening's agenda, if you have come to share something else with us that's not on this evening's agenda, now is the time for that. Seeing nobody, can we double check the Zoom to make sure we don't have any public raising their hand or using *9 if there's anybody from the phone?
Sorry. Where did it go? I can't open it. Meetings. This one, I can't get it to show up.
Careful.
Yeah, I'm like,
Drag it back over.
Chair recognizes
There's-
Commissioner Howe
okay, so how do
at 6:34.
Sorry for the IT difficulty, Chairman.
No problem at all. We've got it straightened out now. Thank you.
Chair, we have one attendee from the public attending via Zoom.
Okay, and they're not raising their hand? though?
They are not raising their hands at this
Okay,
time.
great, thanks. All right, then,
Cancel. No, just cancel. The bottom. No, that. Thank you.
can I invite you up, Lisa, to run with our first item regarding Resolution 8, Series 2022?
Thank you, Commissioners, and thanks for your patience as we work through new technologies, all of us. So tonight, as posted on the agenda, would be consideration of Resolution 8, which are resolutions recommending denial of a draft ordinance. However, staff and the city attorneys have developed a new ordinance that we are re-noticing for a public hearing to be held on July 14th in front of, before Planning Commission. So at this time, rather than adopting the resolutions of denial, we would request that Planning Commission table the draft resolution in consideration of the upcoming new public hearing on the inclusionary housing ordinance.
Thank you. Is there any commissioner discussion of the potential motion to table this?
Not for me.
Thank you. Seeing no motion on the Zooms, all right. Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to table Resolution 8, Series 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you both. And then we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Chair Brown Eyes.
Yes.
Commissioner Osterman. Commissioner Howe.
Yes.
Commissioner Krantz.
Yes.
Commissioner Deal. Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Commissioner Hefner.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move into our item of continued business regarding the final plat, plan unit development and special review use. I believe you also have that.
Yes. All right.
Actually, I will reread.
Yep, let's go ahead and
All
reread
right.
the script. Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing on a request for a final plat, plan unit development and special review use. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application, materials, and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. We've already had the presentation and testimony initially by city staff, but we'll have some additional presentation by staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we will have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. And do we have substantial changes that we intend to open public hearing on?
We will be presenting new evidence related to
Okay.
a traffic study or
Okay.
trip generation letter.
All right, after these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting by computer or telephone or in person may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak is asked to use a comment card or a speaker card that's available on the table to my right. And if you're participating by telephone, please use *9, or on Zoom, use the raise hand function. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. The purpose of public comment is to receive public testimony and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and address. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing none. Do we have notification?
Yes, this application was properly noticed and properly continued at the last Planning Commission meeting to tonight, which carries forth the notice.
Thank you. Do we have any disclosures from Planning Commission? Commissioner Moline.
Pardon, Chair Bronice, not a disclosure, but I'm not sure if Keaton is seeing at least I am not seeing any of the proceedings in the room. But I'm hearing everything, but I'm not able to see any city presentation. I can just see the city logo, and I thought I should share that information.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. That is a little technical glitch, or perhaps not little. Especially, I think it's important because that means that the feed of the commissioners who are participating by Zoom is not going up.
Well, we have the feed back there, but I think Dave has to switch that behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think the important thing is they see what's being presented on the screen.
Yep.
With
But
the
I don't think he's seeing
presentation.
that all.
He's not, exactly, yeah. So
Right.
maybe we could take a brief recess and,
All right.
yeah.
Thanks. We'll take a 1 or 2 minute recess while we,
Can you see?
thank you for pointing that out.
Yep.
Thanks, Commissioner Moline. I didn't know if that was a special for me or not.
Yep. I suppose one thing we could do is we could log into the city's stream of the hearing
Yep.
maybe at the same time. It might be a little,
There
And
could
then
be a
just-
slight delay, maybe.
yeah, maybe just not without the sound perhaps or
Yeah.
something.
Hold on, Commissioner Moline and Howe. We'll
Okay.
see if we can get it to project properly, but if not, that's a good backup.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Though I would guess that would make my deliberation even smoother than normal. And I wonder if I need to make the roll call. Is that, do you think that's
No,
part of
that's not actually required. We've recognized your
Okay.
joining at 6:34. Thanks.
Okay. And I can see a computer screen now. The windows.
Is that better, Commissioner Moline?
Yes.
Commissioner Howe?
Yeah, I see the computer screen.
Yep, me too.
Let me see if it picks up. Yeah, there
Yep.
we go.
There we go.
Backwards.
Yeah.
Commissioners Howe and Moline, can you both confirm you can see the presentation?
Yep.
Great.
Yes. See
Thank
it.
you so much.
Yep.
Sure, thank you for letting us know. Apologies again, we'll get better at this as we do more of these hybrid meetings. Okay, are we good to continue? Okay, so yeah, tonight we're hearing a continued item from June 9th, and this is Resolution 9, Series 2022. Tonight in the presentation, I'm just going to go quickly through the new information, but first, to orient us, again, this is consideration of the DLOS Plan Unit Development Amendment, Special Review, Use, and Plat, and it covers the subject property that is shown here in red, with Griffith Street on the north and Cannon Street along the west. So in response to some questions from both Planning Commission and the public that were raised at the last public hearing on June 9th regarding traffic and potential trip generation and parking, the applicant did consult with Kimley Horn, who is their traffic engineer, who wrote a trip generation letter, which forecasts an anticipated traffic demand. So this, this is their modeling based on the institution of traffic engineers and all of the assumptions for different land uses. And so basically, they run these models, and this estimates the traffic volume that would occur from this development. And so highlighted in yellow, you'll see the daily trips. Collectively, between the two uses, roughly 530 daily trips. The number, though, that typically folks pay attention to are the peak hour trips, because that's when the highest volume of cars are on the street. And so in this project, they anticipate 22 out AM trips and 8 in for a total of 30, and then PM peak hours a total of 44. Just for some comparison, what I did find, I did not locate a traffic study for all of the overall anticipated Highway 42 framework plan, right? So really, it's kind of as development has come in. And so for comparison, though, I did find the traffic generation for the remainder of DELO that is already developed. So DELO Phase 1, 1A, and 2, which are kind of the comparison areas that we were looking at for density earlier. And so for comparison, those combination of those developments are anticipated to generate 2,900 trips daily, with the peak hour trips kind of down in the bottom right. And so again, this one is 532, so about 20% of the overall that would be anticipated for the DELO combined. So just for a little bit of magnitude, we're sharing that. I do have all of the other slides in the presentation for you. We did also, in response to some concerns and questions regarding drainage, we've added another condition of approval. So for now, I'll just cover the conditions, and then if you want to cover any of the other information, we can. The first two conditions remain the same. Hours of operation for the exterior areas on the site, and then an upgrade on the fencing. And then additionally, we did look at the drainage study. We reconfirmed with Public Works. Generally, we don't have concerns that what is shown will not work. However, we have identified that it does need some minor modifications just to ensure that some of the parking lot areas are going to grade properly or drain properly. So the drainage report hadn't been updated as some of the site plan iterations have occurred throughout the application process. And so prior to City Council, we're just asking that the applicant make minor modifications to the drainage report and drainage plan in the PUD just to ensure alignment in the plans. So again, we're not concerned that this is going to cause any substantive changes, but we just want to make sure that there's no outstanding issues before we get to City Council. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and then the applicant is also here for any questions for you tonight.
Great, thank you. Commissioner, questions? Go ahead.
I just
Commissioner.
have one question on the trip generation, which is the daily number for the residential seems really high compared to the peak numbers. Mm-hmm. I know it's based on just a standard estimation method, but what are all those other trips?
That's a really great question. I am not an expert in trip generation analysis. Rob, I don't know if you have kind of a textbook answer, or Elizabeth, on why that ratio is so off.
No, I don't have any real a great technical answer, although I do know when you see a residential distribution, it tends to be spread out through the day more than say an office where you really have that peak hour in and out. There's more residential trips during the day typically.
Okay.
And Commissioners Howe and Moline, I don't have any access to seeing you raise hands right now. I'm not sure. It worked.
Commissioner Moline has his hand raised.
Okay, great. Commissioner Moline?
Thank you, Chair Brown Eyes. A question, Lisa. I appreciate the new information. The Public Works Department has reviewed this and feels like that this additional traffic, this 20% increase in traffic in the DELO area is something that the street system in the neighborhood can handle. I'm certain that must be true. Just checking.
Yeah, no, excuse me, that's a good question. They, I would say, did a quick review of the strip generation letter in advance of this hearing, and the response from the engineers that I chatted with expressed no concerns. They felt like the transportation network, both in this particular context as well as the larger vicinity, including 42 and the intersections, that it could accommodate it. They'll do a deeper dive review of this prior to City Council.
Okay. Thank you. That's great. Thanks very much.
Commissioner Howe also has his hand raised.
Okay, just a moment. Commissioner Krantz, go ahead.
Just to follow up, will that include the level of service for the intersection at Griffith and 42?
We did not request that the applicant do a full traffic study, which would include a trip level of service analysis. So for now, they just did the trip generation. Public Works typically only requires kind of higher level of traffic studies as the impact increases. And so from their perspective, the percentage of traffic generated from this development is going to be, pretty marginal compared to the overall level of service throughout the area.
Commissioner Howe.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for updating me with those new studies. There was a public comment that regarding, it was from a neighboring company regarding previous agreements in regard to the traffic linking Caledonia to Highway 42 and previous PUDs. Can you comment on that? And are we consistent with those previous promises?
That's a good question. So this, any specific kind of property owner to property owner agreements that aren't part of any PUD or plat application, I can't speak to exactly what was agreed to between private parties, but I can acknowledge generally what was in the previous application, what is in the policy documents that we have, and what this proposal is indicating. And so you'll see on the slide in front of you kind of an iteration of the intended access. And so I think what you're referring to are some agreements between property owners as well as embedded in their previous approvals for access through the properties between Cannon out to 42. And so you can see on this slide here, the red box indicates where future connections between the Delo West development and Highway 42 could occur. And you'll see that this red alignment aligns with the recently reconstructed access point onto 42. So this red box, the portion that's on the part of the application that's not under, or part of the property that's not under consideration, basically the part with the aerial over in this side, that's not part of this application. And so those property owners between Delo West, and we call this the Boom property over here to the east, they have a joint agreement between them to kind of continue to work together for maintenance and access through here. However, the current approval on the books for the property here to the east is shown in yellow. And so this yellow box is outlet 1, and that is the platted outlet that is intended to provide access through. And so you can see there's a misalignment at this point. So that would have to be corrected through a future application. And so ultimately, City Planning Commission and then City Council would approve any change to this access location officially through future applications. And I can't necessarily speak to a private agreement between property owners and if that is being carried forth, but I can say it's the intent of policy and prior applications is we're still working toward access through here.
And then can I just do a follow-up question real quick? So if we were to make that part of this provision, would that be appropriate to discuss as part of this proposal? Or you're saying this would be a separate proposal to have either a through street, either public or private?
Yeah, so the property that is to the east is not a part of this application, and so we can't, there's no application in front of us at this time. That property owner is not a part of this application, so I'm not aware of a mechanism that we could bind a property owner who's not a party to this application to make changes. I think if there's some concern that the future property owner potentially, we want to make sure that that continues to be cut through, you could consider a condition to align the red box back down to the yellow. But I think from our perspective, staff is comfortable with the direction that this alignment is moving, given that it aligns with the existing egress out onto 42. I don't know if that answered your question well enough or not.
I think that suffices for now.
Okay.
Do we have additional commissioner questions? Could I ask you to put the conditions up again,
Yeah.
please? Regarding the sound hours, so right now for like construction activity in residential areas, that's typically limited to what, 8 a.m. maybe?
7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays and 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. on weekends.
So then, where do
8
we
a.m.
still
to
end
8
up at
p.m.
this 10 o'clock at night for music?
You know, this is just a starting point for discussion. Certainly, Planning Commission could have some conversation around this. I think, from my perspective, I was trying to balance, kind of the provision of a, relatively vibrant commercial possibility here, right? And recognizing that this property is zoned to allow commercial uses. So it has the zoning in place to allow commercial uses that without a condition of approval, potentially are only subject to our nuisance code and wouldn't have any hours of restrictions. And so in my mind, this is a little bit of a balance of zoning with recognition that there are, neighbors in immediate vicinity. But certainly welcome your thoughts on this one.
Great, thank you. All right, any additional questions of staff? Again, so I don't have any visibility to the Zoom commissioners, so
We'll go back to
Commissioner Krantz, question.
Yeah, I don't have a question per se, but I wanted to mention some of the things that came up in public comments. Is this a good time to do that now?
How about if we do that in just in a little bit, when we open public comments, so we'll do applicant right now. And then, yeah, if I could ask you to do that then, that would be great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, thank you very much. Can we get the applicant up if they have a presentation for this evening? With your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Sean Murphy. Our address is 777 North Grant Street.
And I'm Stacia Giebers with LCP Development and also 777 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado.
We do not have an additional presentation tonight. The presentation we made last week contains all of the, what I'll call the major information. The only new changes are the trip generation letter that Lisa described, and so we're happy to answer any questions relative either to our previous presentation or to the new traffic letter that was submitted this evening.
Great, thank you. Commissioner questions for the applicant?
My question is similar to what I asked staff, maybe just a little context around the trip generation. Any color you can add to that would be helpful.
I don't know that we're any more experts than staff is on what those numbers mean. Frankly, they're often overwhelming in terms of you see these large numbers. I think most would agree that the current apartments probably aren't generating 3,000 vehicles through that area a day. Perhaps they are, but I don't know because I'm not an expert in that field. I think the core of what we took away from the trip generation letter, as well as in conversation with the traffic engineer, was this is not a large increase on the function and traffic flow of this neighborhood, and it wasn't seen as an issue to the current street network. So that's what we took from it, but as far as the specifics in terms of what those numbers mean, we would need to have a traffic engineer answer that question.
Fair enough, thanks.
Any additional commissioner questions for the applicant? Commissioner Krantz?
Yeah, I know you covered this last time about why the decision was made why you felt that the live-work units were not viable and that you would switch to one single commercial building instead. But a member of the public had written a letter in asking, I don't have the exact words, so I don't want to misquote somebody, so I'll make it my own question.
Mm-hmm.
Like what did you do to determine that was not viable?
So it's a number of things. As stated in the Deal Lofts PUD, those units, of which there was 8, range from anywhere from 3,200 to, I want to say, 4,400 square feet. That's a rather large unit. The way the language was worded concerning the proportion of that was designated as commercial versus residential was done as a percentage or a ratio. And I believe it was 66% of that structure was designated for residential occupancy, with the remaining being commercial. But there was some flexibility in terms of how that was being allocated. I think there's a core misunderstanding in terms of what those units were designed to be. It was not designed to be a work from home office or den. It was truly designed to be somebody who owns a small business and wants to have that located on the ground floor. And they were designed to have up to 5 occupants within that ground floor at any one time. And so when we examine, one, the cost to construct that type of unit, and two, what it would either rent or sell for, you know, just based on what the market is dictating just across the street for 2 to 3 bedroom townhomes, those are anywhere from $900,000 and up. And so these would be $1 million+ live work units, and the rent associated that would be largely unfeasible for the market that we perceive to be present. And so between that and the fact that it's kind of a strange use in terms of it's not something you commonly see, and to have that kind of orientation where it's very limited in terms of how it needs to be used. And so it can't just be necessarily somebody living in the full space and using a small portion for a home office. That was not the intention of it. So it was much more rigorous, and we just found it to be abnormal and not something that we've seen elsewhere or seen where we have seen it be successful.
Can I just confirm one more thing? So it would not be possible for a purchaser of a live-work unit to rent out the lower floor to a small business? The way that you were going to structure them in your previous application was such that it would have to be somebody owning it, living above their own business. There would not be any separation.
So the way it was designed, and I want to make it clear, we did not make that submittal. It was the previous owner of this property. So it's hard
right.
for us to speak directly to what they exactly envisioned, but what we can gather from the plans is it wasn't intended to be rented out. The way it functioned, you had a ground floor space as your commercial area that fronted Cannon Street with garages in the rear. A resident or a business owner would walk in through that garage, and then there were stairs located in the commercial space that would go directly up to the residential area. So it would function strangely for it to be split, more like what you'd see in a very urban setting where you have small businesses on the ground floor and, say, lofts or apartments up above. It very much wasn't designed for that. It was designed for an owner or renter of the residential portion to have their own business on the ground floor.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moline.
Thank you, Chair Bronis. I have a couple of questions for the applicant. One of the things I noticed and heard from, and that we heard from some of the public speakers, is the reduction in the amenity space square footage. And I'm again, compared to the previous proposal in the area, I'm wondering if you could speak just a little bit to that, and then also just talk me through the amenity planning that you've done and why you're kind of moving towards more specific uses, such as a pickleball court versus a more kind of multi-usable area.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have in front of me the exact square footages of the previous Delo Lofts PUD. Functionally, it was very similar in terms of the northern portion along Griffith Street had a small pocket park that was a bit larger than what we're able to provide today. And then in between the buildings, there was also some green space as well that was intended to be more traditional open space. The reason we went down this route to the pickleball court is primarily because we've seen that is a growing attraction, and we thought it was a unique offering to both the residents and the community to have something a little different than just an open landscaped area. And so we thought it was a creative way to use open space to engage people with the outdoors rather than just a sod landscape. And so there wasn't necessarily a core decision to do that, other than it seemed like a nice, usable amenity in a sport or a hobby that is growing throughout the nation, and still being able to provide a small sod pocket park area on the north end of the property.
Great, thank you. I have at least one more question, and that is, we heard some comments at the last meeting about parking issues, and just wondering if you all kind of do some analysis in your work in preparation for developing this that could address some of those concerns about the amount of parking, and will all the residents that you've proposed be able to have adequate parking, I guess?
So we do our own analysis as well, just in understanding how these units are typically leased. And as far as the residents themselves, we firmly believe that they will have adequate on-site parking, whereas the only on-street parking that's truly intended is for guests of those residents, as well as for any overflow of the retail parking, depending on those peak demand hours. However, that largely depends. Oftentimes you can get some favorable sharing between a retail tenant and apartment tenant, but depending when those residents and those commercial users are present. But we do believe that there's adequate parking. The on-site parking meets all of the criteria of the code, and then we're only indicating that the off-street parking is used for guests.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Moline. Commissioner Howe.
Hi, thanks again for being here present and presenting your proposal again 2 weeks ago to the day. So I just want to follow up on my question that I had for Lisa Ritchie, which was, have you had any discussions with the neighboring companies regarding the traffic? I think one of the concerns is the amount of traffic, then the other concern is traffic flow. You had any discussions with them regarding Caledonia and that development of that road there?
Yes, we absolutely have, and I don't necessarily want to comment directly on that, other than providing perhaps a little history of our understanding of this roadway. From when we started this application, it was clear that there was an intention to make a connection with the adjacent property based on the plat of the neighboring Boom property to the east. However, as Lisa showed tonight, that configuration does not align with the access point of Highway 42 there. And so we still firmly believe that connection should take place. However, we don't want to design it to meet with Outlot 1, where it would functionally not connect to Highway 42. And so it's clear to us that the most viable solution is for us to design our connection point to align seamlessly with Highway 42, and then upon the application for the neighboring property, that needs to be replatted to match the actual access point of Highway 42. In respects to the private agreement that we've negotiated, that's essentially what that assures, is that upon development of that neighboring property, that connection can seamlessly occur to the existing apron on Highway 42 as was originally intended. Some of the comments that we've heard is relative to whether or not that was ever a public right-of-way. And for us, we don't know that history, so it's hard for us to comment on that.
And if you're comfortable with that and the commission deems so, would you be comfortable with that as a condition to this proposal?
No, I don't think we'd be comfortable with the public right-of-way dedication.
And then a second question for you, if I could bother you for one more question. In Denver, they have some requirements for heat islands. And when I say that, of course, you may know what I'm bringing up, which is when there's a lot of concrete, provides a lot of heat generation. And do you know the percentage or the proportions of how much hardscape versus park and landscape you guys are proposing?
I do not know the percentage of open space. A comment I'll make relative to that is that we are planning carports for a good portion of those on-site parking stalls, which will help reduce that heat load to some extent. But I don't know the ratio of open space versus impermeable area.
And so, Sean, I guess this piggybacks what Commissioner Moline was talking about, which was the pickleball idea, and maybe if we, I don't know what the commission will deliberate on, but if that were to be a different use, would you be amenable to that idea? Maybe less of a hardscape.
I think we can be more flexible with the use of amenity areas, pending what the request of planning is. We still firmly believe that it's a good activated use for the area, so we would be, not excited about seeing that go, but it's something that we could discuss absolutely.
And then one last question, just to follow up on that. And then is that still planning to be a public? I know we asked you this last time. Public or private use for that pickleball?
As of now, it's intended for the residents of the building. For us to consider it, for it to be public, we'd need to have a further understanding of how to make that happen, both from a maintenance perspective as well as a liability perspective. So it wasn't intended to necessarily be open to the public, but more to residents and the guests of the property.
Thanks for your time. That's great.
Thank you.
Any additional commissioner questions for the applicant? Seeing none at this time, we'll go ahead and open the public comment period. I'll ask people who are here to speak, please limit yourself to 3 minutes, and please begin with stating your full name and address. And before we do that, or as we do that, I'd invite Commissioner Krantz to share with us some of the bullet points of what we've heard thus far, if you would.
Oh, thanks. And thanks to all the members of the public who took the time to write letters in. I just noted that there were 28 letters in our packets and a few duplicates. I mean, not duplicate letters, but people who wrote in more than once. So we have about 25 letters from the public. And it seemed like some of the main issues that you've brought up already were the change in density, the traffic, the parking, and the open space area. And then just a few miscellaneous things. I think we touched on a lot of these, but I just wanted to acknowledge that these were all brought up in those 25 letters. And I should mention that one of the letters was asking it to be approved asking us to approve your proposal as you made it. The other issues were the maintenance of the park that's on Cannon Street right now. Somebody thought that there would be 105 cars a day at an intersection. I'm not sure where that number came from. Buildings were too tall. The pocket park at the north end from the original plan is no longer there. Difficulty navigating the intersection at Griffith and Cannon. Problems with pedestrian traffic and the design of the metal-clad building not being attractive in a residential area. The HOA maintaining the park that might be used by new residents, issues with dogs, drainage, and the location of the carports, and use of the carports for solar panels, and the potential use by new residents of the driveways adjacent to Cannon Street. I just wanted to acknowledge that we heard all of those items mentioned.
Thank you very much. Then if we can invite the first member of the public to speak, and then if also we can know who's up next after that.
Sure. So Michael McClure, followed by Ellen Kirk.
Do I have to do any? Sounds like
Yep,
you're hearing me fine?
perfect, yep.
Okay, great. I've watched you you guys turn your mic on and turn your mic off.
All right, yeah.
All right. Starting my timer now. First, thank you very much for considering and opening for public comment again after last meeting went long and some of us weren't sure we were going to get to speak. I live on Griffith Street, and thank you also, Ms. Krantz, or Councilwoman Krantz? Commissioner Krantz, for rehearsing and running through those again. I wanted to speak briefly about waiver number 1, the density waiver, reminding the council that the comprehensive plan allows for a density of 25 residences per acre, and the Highway 42 plan allows for up to 30. And that, as I remember, if I'm quoting correctly, the current density is 29.5. Thank you. So as a resident there, basically, I'm hearing you say you're pushing the density to the max, or almost the max. But that density is actually beyond at least one of the limits, the one issued or in the comprehensive plan of 25. So we're exceeding essentially at least one limit, if not pushing up against the second limit with the density. I'm just asking, I think we should really consider whether we really need to push the density for that, especially when, as I understand the 42 comprehensive plan, there will be even higher density on 42 when that is developed. Second point, the Caledonia cut-through or the lack of alignment, even today, what I hear as a person who, what I hear as an engineer is that this doesn't align, and I just heard, I believe it was, we're not comfortable with the public designation right now. I'm trying to quote you about, I probably didn't get that right, but it seems like we need to tackle this alignment thing now, or we're just deferring it to later. Also, with our concerns about traffic, having that alignment and that through traffic open, a lot of us have concern about the traffic on Cannon Street. Having that cut through open as part of the initial plan, and not for being deferred, or at least being made open now in whatever power the council has to do. Of course, we think that might alleviate some of the traffic on Cannon Street, while also in some ways resolving this issue about the cut through and the alignment now, rather than deferring it to the future. Finally, I have one more note about there is a slight issue around snow removal. I believe this was brought up in one of the letters. With the snow removal right now, the snow is plowed into the street where it sits in the sun and melts, essentially on what would be a parking spot now. If we reverse that, that was not part of the plan for Delo's snow removal, to the way that the east-west alleys in the Delo townhomes neighborhood are set up. There isn't necessarily a place to put the snow at the other end. So it was designed to go out to the street right now, and that's just a concern for us. And I'm at 11:10. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. And also, who will be on deck?
Ellen Kirk is up now, and on deck is Michelle Smither.
And if you could also then check Zoom at some point. If you check Zoom at some point. Thanks.
I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, so you can hear me. I'm Ellen Kirk. I live on Maria Lane, and I will echo everything that my colleague said, and I will raise two specific points. The number of trips study that was done, that's not a comprehensive traffic impact study, and it's not done by an objective party. So that was done by someone who I think was paid by the person who wants it to come out favorably. There was a time in my life I was an investment banker and we got paid to do fairness opinions. No one ever issued an unfairness opinion because they wouldn't get paid. So there's a lack of objectivity in those numbers, which is troubling. The second issue I have is the city staff said that the engineers didn't think that the percentage that was represented by the additional number would cause a problem with the traffic. That assumes, I believe, that there's no problem with the traffic now. during drop-off and pickup at the school, we already can't go west on Griffith because we can't get out at the school. So we have to go the other way, and that's now with no additional traffic. Finally, I'm a cyclist, and I already have difficulty either getting safely out of my driveway and getting on to Cannon and then getting onto 42. And again, that's with no new traffic. So I'm going to give you back your minute.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Do we have anybody on Zoom with raised hands?
We have one attendee by call with a raised hand.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, why don't we bring them, if we
Okay.
can bring them in?
Hello, caller at 8226. Can you hear us? And can you please confirm that we can hear you?
You may be on mute.
Can you
Yes.
can you hear me now?
We have you now.
Sorry
yeah.
about that. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sherry Summer. I live at 910 South Palisade Court. And I believe it was Commissioner Howe who mentioned the pickleball court. I really appreciated those comments, and I'd like to follow up on them. I feel like everyone likes pickleball now, but if you look towards the future, it may just kind of fizzle out, but everybody likes to be outside. I think that's that area. I don't live there, but I've walked through there, and I notice a lot of people walking their dogs, and the space is kind of tight. I mean, the outdoor space is very well used. So if it's sort of a, either or, we could do either or. I would definitely think that outdoor park space would be, or open space, however you'd like to configure it, would be much more beneficial for all of the neighbors in that area. I think there's also a fairness issue, because if you do a pickleball court for the residents of that complex, well, they could use the park of the neighbors, but the neighbors can't use their pickleball court, and they will be using an amenity that other people are paying HOA dues for. I also think the heat island effect is super important. Pickleball, I mean, like, not that I'm picking on pickleball, it's fine, but that's, I'm sure it's a great sport. I'll never play it, but however, I mean, that's like, fun things come and go, but global warming is here to stay. So anything we can do to reduce the heat island effect is a good thing. Then I'd also like to talk about the traffic. I mean, I just look at that corner and I think about that neighborhood, like the neighborhoods in that area, and I feel like they're about to get really walloped by traffic. I would like to ask you to consider the density waiver. That neighborhood will be heavily impacted already and greatly changed when all of the development that's slated in that area takes place. And I also would just have a question. I don't know if you'll answer this question, but Ms. Ritchie said that they don't do a complete traffic study unless the impact is significant. My question is, what is the trigger for a full traffic study? And the other question is, how do you know from whatever study you do if the amount is significant or not, if you haven't done a full traffic study? Thank you very much. And I especially appreciate Commissioner Krantz shedding light on all of the public comments. I appreciate her reading all those letters and analyzing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Summer. Then we can invite up our next in-person.
Hi there, Michelle Smither. I live on Johnson Lane.
Actually,
Ellen and I.
Sorry, complete address?
1045.
Thanks.
Ellen and I talked on the way over, so she kind of hit a lot of my points. I'm just really shocked you haven't done a traffic implementation study. I mean, that just, right now, it's really hard to get out of our neighborhoods. On Cannon Street, when we pull out, you can't see on either side to get out. I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit in my car and also on my bike. You cannot see. There is people already parked up and down that. I don't know where else you're going to put more cars. There's been a number of wrecks at Griffith and Cannon because you can't see, because all the Louisville tire cars are parked right there. So when you try to pull out, You can't see there either. And when there's the school's on, you cannot go that way. It's absolutely ridiculous. So whoever is making up this, there is going to be no traffic impact, come and live at my house for a week. I invite you. I really do. And try to get out during peak hours without getting hit. The next thing that's going to happen is when I back out of my, they'll start using our traffic, our little streets. You have to go really slow to get out because you can't see as you're pulling out. And the alleyway is really small. So if somebody comes speeding through, if they're late for work and hit my car as I'm trying to back out, I mean, it's just, I understand the need for this kind of thing. But, and I love the woman before who talked about the pickleball thing. Already our neighborhood gets kids with skateboards, cyclists jumping up and down our ramps, and people who don't live there walking their dogs and their dogs doing their business in our neighborhood. And not every person picks up their stuff. So they put their pickleball court over there, and who's going to get their dogs walking through our neighborhood? Not picking up the remainder of their dogs' leftovers. I'm just in shock that we haven't done. I have a friend who works for the Planning Commission in Boulder, and when I was explaining this to him, he goes, "Oh yeah, they'll do that, the traffic impact study." And I said, "No, they're not. They're trusting a letter from somebody who doesn't live there and hasn't seen what school does when it's there and high traffic time." I highly wish you would do a traffic implementation study.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker.
Tom Deeney, followed by Lindsay Deneau.
Thank you. Tom Deeney, 1090 Griffith, so I'm directly across the street from where the commercial property would be. And I'm one of the people that submitted 2 letters, so I'll try to go quickly through this. But first, I agree with everything that everyone has said so far. The traffic is really significant across there. We're right at the corner of Cannon and Griffith. That pedestrian sign has been replaced 2 or 3 times by people going out there, turning too short, having to rush through that intersection. There's a crosswalk there with a sign in the middle of the street. That gets hit regularly. Cannon is a fairly narrow street, significant parking all the time on that. Sometimes during the day you can get a parking place, but early morning, in the evening, that is pretty much full already, either from Louisville Tire or from residents. So the additional parking, I understand it may only be for guests, but realize that is a narrow street cluttered by cars on both sides all the time. I'll reiterate Michelle's points on the traffic study. To not have a traffic study of what's going on at Griffith and 42 makes no sense. That is a significant problem trying to get on to 42. So Cannon to Griffith, Griffith to 42, especially during school days, is a significant issue. For me, we shouldn't be funneling all this traffic onto Cannon out of this development. There should be something off of Griffith, and the cut through to 42 on the south end should be done before any of this takes place. Funneling everything onto Cannon that's already overcrowded, overparked, simply makes no sense. It was not designed for that kind of traffic load. Michelle invited you to her house. We're actually on that corner of Cannon and Griffith, so I would recommend coming to our house and sitting on our patio for a while. Coffee, wine, whatever you like, we're happy to share. We bought with the understanding of what was going in. I understand that the work, live thing may not be as good at this point in time, but to increase the density to the level that is being asked makes no sense to me at all. We went in with an understanding of what that neighborhood was going to be like, to have some additional apartments over there. We did not buy with the understanding it was going to be the amount of density that is now being proposed. So I would ask that we do a lot more work before this is ready to go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker, yes.
Hi, Lindsay Denault, 1074 Griffith Street. I just want to reiterate everybody's comments. Thank you so much for your consideration. I appreciate that you are holding a second session. I am also one of those who wrote 2 letters, but I grew up in Louisville, and when I moved back, I was really very happy to see the same kind of town that I had grown up in. And I know change is inevitable. I know that increased density for housing is also important. But I think that comparing the previous plan to this plan, doubling is simply unreasonable. And also, in my view, frankly, I'm not sure where the need is coming from. The only reason that the apartments that currently exist are mostly occupied now, I would imagine, is because of the fires. In terms of commercial space, you know, we've had empty storefronts for years, so I'm not sure where the demand for even more expanded commercial space is really coming from. I also just want to kind of reiterate some comments about, you know, diminishing the green space. I think is an irresponsible decision. It pushes the burden of neighborhood maintenance onto us folks who are already paying HOA fees, which you know, just doesn't seem fair, frankly. And I really, not that it hasn't already been hammered home, but the traffic on Griffith Street is, it's shocking. You know, we've got cars screaming through there all the time on off hours. During school pickup, with the train especially, it can be totally blocked. The safety for, you know, there are kids, cyclists in the neighborhood that, you know, I fear for their safety just given the volume of traffic that there is already. I don't know how it could sustain, you know, 66 more units plus the commercial space. So I would just reiterate the plea for a legitimate, objective traffic study and a reconsideration of the density waiver. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'd like to take a 5-minute break if we can, but if we can know who's up next after the break.
After the break is Mark Gasper, followed by Bruce Bernhardt.
Great, thanks. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, great, thanks. If we can call the meeting back to order. And yeah, I believe you're next.
Yes, Mark Gasper, 1014 Johnson Lane.
We can't hear.
Okay,
It
thank
looks
you.
like- yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner Moline. We can hear you, so that's at least helpful. We
Yep.
we will work on audio from this end.
Can you hear me
Yep,
now?
it's good Yep.
Okay. So Mark Gasper, 1014 Johnson Lane. I just want to start with making an observation that, citizens of Louisville just shot down the Retail Ridge proposal over the increase in the density. And I don't understand why we're going after this one and increasing the density yet again without giving the citizens a chance to vote on this. But specifically, I guess what I would have expected in this presentation, and maybe it's there and I apologize if I missed it, but a true analysis based on facts based on the number of bedrooms proposed and the current apartment complex sitting right there and their number of bedrooms and their number of cars, how many parked cars are we expecting in this place and how many real parking spots? Because I can tell you that every time I walk through that apartment complex to get downtown Delo, they're not using the covered sheds because they have to pay for that. 3/4 of those are empty. The people are parking on the street in front of the apartment complex. And it's going to be the same here. They're going to park on Cannon Street and Griffith Street. And I went out the last 5 days in a row, and I've got video of it to show you that Louisville Tire takes up every single parking spot on Griffith Street, all the way from 42 to Cannon Street. It's a business. They need it, and they're going to have it. So I don't understand where we're going to park all these cars. And then last and foremost, just to reiterate what everybody said, is trying to get out of Cannon Street, onto Griffith Street. Every time you turn left, you take your life in your hands because you cannot see from all the parked cars. If you go right, you cannot turn left on 42. You have to take a right on 42, or again, you take your life in your hands. I don't understand what we're going to do with more traffic and more parking needs there. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bruce Bernhardt, followed by Ms. Rita Zamora.
Thank you for providing this opportunity for the public to speak about this. My name is Bruce Bernhardt. I live at 1079 Leonard Lane, which is right on Cannon Street, directly across from where the proposed development is. I'm going to make two comments first. My wife and I have been there for 4 years. We are looking forward to something being developed on that property besides the open wasteland that it is now with buildings that aren't being used. We do not particularly care for the plan that's in place. We like the previous one. My second comment is I am a pickleball player. Having said that, the pickleball court would be right across the street from my house. If it was open to the public, that would be so convenient to me. That's not the best use of that space. That development needs more green space. That's what should go in that area, not another pickleball court. Most of my neighbors have already spoken tonight, and I don't want to just rehash what they've said, but I do have one additional comment, and that is that the lanes, Maria Lane, Johnson Lane, Leonard Lane, that cut from Cannon Street to Front Street are the ones where all of our garages open up. It's not a very wide lane, and those garages open up for our people to come in and out of the neighborhood, but also for children to come out and play. And I'm very concerned about the safety issue of a number of people from the new development maybe trying to cut through to get to another spot, to get to Front Street and maybe get out on Griffith Street there. I think it's going to create a safety issue for a number of the families that live there. The second comment, and my last one, is about the traffic study, which I do think needs to be done, but please don't do it during the summer months. Wait until school is in session and you can see the amount of traffic on Griffith Street going to the middle school and how that impacts residents' abilities to get from Cannon or Front Street out to Griffith and then to access either Main Street or Route 42. I think that's all I have to offer. I hope you'll listen to what the public has had to say. And as I said, we're anxious for a development to occur there, but I think it has to be the right kind of development that suits that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a matter of decorum, as the next speaker comes up, now you can come up. Just if we can keep it quiet in the audience, whether you're for or against what the speaker is saying, it's going to distract whether you're for or against them. So silent head motions, that's all good, whatever you want to say. But all right, the next speaker.
Hello, thank you for being here. I did want to just clarify something because I have my computer glasses on, so I could only see so far tonight, but that traffic data that you had up originally, was that from 2015?
We'll address that later.
Yes, please check that out, because if that's the case, it's going to be drastically different than what it is today.
I think you saw the license date perhaps, but we'll double check that.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, my address is 1082 Griffith. So I live at the corner of Griffith and Cannon.
And your full name again?
Rita Zamora.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I did just want to reiterate so everybody hears, but I work from home, and I've worked from home for the past 10 years. I've had a remote business. So I hear everything that's going on. We have a dog. I'm walking the dog like 3 or 4 times a day. And it sounds like a bullet is shot every time someone hits the crosswalk sign. And I think it's been replaced about 5 times. Somebody said earlier maybe 2 or 3 times. But that just kind of illustrates how tight that intersection is at Griffith and Cannon. So I wanted to mention that. And then also, my husband and I moved up in this area from Denver, from a very nice area in Denver near Lowry and Cherry Creek, because we wanted to get away from the traffic and the concrete jungle. So I can appreciate that you have this vision for what you want the neighborhood to look like, but Louisville has been voted one of the best places to live because it's got this amazing, green space, trees. We love the trees in downtown. And I'm hoping that we're not just diminishing the whole character of the neighborhood. I feel like we're like on the wrong side of the tracks with Little Italy and our little neighborhood. And it's just a great community. And we have dogs, dogs, dogs. We love our dogs. And I hope that you will take time to come and visit. I thought I heard somebody mention at the last meeting, oh yeah, I went down there a few years ago, but I haven't been there lately. It's a really beautiful community, and we want to keep that going with green space. The last thing I'll say is I hope if there's a park, it's at the corner and not where it's proposed now behind the commercial space. It's going to be adjacent to a tire shop that's empty after hours. There's like a little old lady that's lived forever at the corner of Griffith and Cannon in Little Italy, and she's going to be subject to whoever's hanging out at that park behind the commercial space at all hours of the night. It's going to be very unsafe. So I hope that we could at least, if we have to have this plan, which I'm opposed to, we were really sold on this neighborhood because the original plan was amazing. So I'm hoping if it does go through that you would consider having them put the park, a larger park. We need that green space. We love our dogs. We need places for our dogs and us to recreate and be outside because we all love nature in our neighborhood too. So you heard a lot about traffic. Think about us, the people and the dogs and the kids that are out walking in the street. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There are no other participants according to the
Okay.
pile of cards.
Okay, we have one additional card. And do we have anybody else on Zoom, just as a double check?
Double check. Where'd it go? No, that was a previous speaker.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great, thanks.
One last speaker, Mr. Michael Deboerski.
I am Michael Deboerski at 601 Pine Street here in Louisville. I too was raised in Louis, and we seem to be the exception nowadays, but appreciate those that joined us. My concern is I'll be quite honest, my selfish little space. We've been working on this for 20 years through Planning Commission, through working with the developers, and working with the neighbors too. Elizabeth Law Evans is here. She's been a fantastic neighbor. She has always directed me to work with the developers, and that I have. And so perhaps unfortunately she's been kind of excluded from some of these discussions, agreements, and some of the process that got us here today. But nonetheless, that's what kind of got us to the approval that I endorsed in 2016 that I thought was a good plan. It was good for the drainage, which is paramount for our storage units. People store their valuables in there, and they don't want grandma's old antique hutch to be ruined and destroyed through water mitigating or running into our property. And that's happened in the past, and that's why I bring it up. Also, water is run in from Cannon Street as well. And so for that issue, the drainage is paramount. We've asked the applicant to return back to the underground drainage on the southwest corner of their property, and I think it's a fair request on our part. The larger concern is Caledonia Street. It was designated to be a street. That's why it was 33 foot wide. And I believe staff has voiced that does accommodate, not in this session, but does accommodate for a public street. So that was originally in the plan. DELO representation came to me and asked if they could shorten that up to an alley, a public alley of 28 feet. I don't know if that ever came to fruition or what that designation is currently, but that was the agreement. And that agreement for us, we have a very narrow piece of property. I'm not sure that anybody really realistically thinks that we'll have storage there forever. It's my mother's retirement package at this point in time. And ultimately it will become something else with the higher and better use. The county and city makes more on property taxes there than mom can take home each year. So there'll be a financial time when that has to change. With that said, that's why we've always been consistent in our desire to have Cannon Street butt up to our property so that we could access Cannon from our property line. Given that the misalignment occurred and the opportunity to align the driveway with Caledonia Street, we would accept connectivity to that. And that would be somewhere along our storage unit property, a connective point. Sean has heard me out from LCP on that need, and I certainly hope they can accommodate, because that was what was promised. We would have access to Caledonia. Caledonia would run upside our property, and with that, our contingent approval all hinged on that fact. And like I said before in front of this body, we're very literal people. Your good word and your handshake goes a long way, and still does at my business, and I believe it should at everybody else's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just note something quickly, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Deboerski provided a letter that I handed out while he was speaking that he wanted to provide to the commission as well, so we would have to enter that into the record.
Okay, we'll enter it into the record. If we could have a motion to enter the letter into the record.
So moved.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you asked for a motion.
Yeah, I did.
As well as addendum 1 that was emailed and was posted on the website
And
earlier
addendum
today.
1.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
I move we admit the letter as well as addendum 1 into the record.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no dissension, motion carries. Thank you. With that then, we will invite the applicant back up for a response and closing statement. Do you wish to address anything raised by the public comment or provide any additional information for us to consider?
Thank you again for giving us an opportunity to, I think, respond in part to some of the comments we've heard, which, again, we have paid very close attention to. The largest topic seems to be in regards to traffic. We tried to address that by having a professional engineer using standards defined, give at least an estimate of what that would look like. I think the other consideration that has been brought up time and time again is the deviation from the original plan and how much this has changed. We actually went back and looked at that original plan versus what we're proposing today, and not from a unit count, from a bedroom count instead. The difference between those was roughly 18 bedrooms, and that's largely because all of those townhomes were designed, or the live-work units were designed as 3-bedroom units. So it's not quite as much density as I think a lot of people perceive in terms of the change of plans. It's not doubling in size necessarily. Other than that, I think we are very open to working cooperatively with staff and with yourselves to provide the green space that is clearly of demand. And if that means changing the pickleball court to a sodded area, we are happy to make that consideration. Otherwise, we do believe and continue to believe that what we've proposed is appropriate for this area. It meets the comprehensive plans. It meets the mixed-use zoning of having a commercial use to support a more mixed-use area. And all we can ask is that you give us consideration this evening.
Thank you very much. We invite a staff response and closing statement.
Thanks, Commissioners. So I don't have any specific things to address, just one response to a public question regarding the 2015 date in the staff report. And that is referencing a study that was developed in 2015 related to the approval of the existing DELO development. So it's a 2015 study because it was developed and approved around that time. And then we're happy to walk through any of our logic on conditions or any potential new conditions of approval, or as always, if Planning Commission, desires additional information related to any of the items raised tonight, we seek your direction and input on that, and could bring that back to you.
Thank you. Lisa, could you just, sorry, do you mind if I ask a question? Could you just clarify, we have a new traffic generation analysis as well as one from 2015?
Yes, that's correct. So in the staff report, you'll see the applicant's traffic engineer created a new trip generation letter as it relates to this development. It doesn't do a comparison between this development and the previous development. This is only an estimate for this development. So it might be, something if Planning Commission wants to dive into traffic a little further, there could be a trip generation comparison between the DELO Lofts, previous PUD, and compare it to that one so we can see the approval that was on the books versus this one, or any other larger study.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moline.
Just a question or comment continuing along the traffic study lines. So the current letter that we received from the applicant's engineer did consider the existing situation. I just want to make sure I'm getting that right.
It's a trip generation letter for the anticipated trips that would be generated from this development.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, so it doesn't include any analysis of the transportation networks and kind of the impact of this development on the networks around it. It's just simply traffic generation.
And I would just add that a typical traffic study would include an analysis of the background traffic, and then look at what this traffic adds, and then also assess the system in and around the area to make sure that all of the intersections function well based on the proposal. And so that's, so trying to understand if there's an increase from the previous development, we don't have that data, and then understanding that broader traffic impact analysis where you would also compare everything to background traffic and intersection function. We don't have that information at this time.
I guess if I could just kind of continue on that. Thank you, Rob. I mean, we're hearing so much about this. I guess I'm kind of curious. And maybe just if we could explain a little bit for the public's benefit. I mean, it's not unusual to have the applicant supply some of the traffic study information. That's part of their application requirements, is to have produce those studies for us. It's our Public Works Department that then has the opportunity to review those and ensure that they are adequate and that we're creating the conditions that are going to be suitable for this development to fit into this community. And I guess maybe my question is, do you think Public Works are they comfortable with what they've heard at this point? Or I don't know, we're hearing so much from the neighbors about concerns about traffic that is a larger study warranted in this instance, I guess, is kind of, yeah.
I think that's a fair question, and you're right. So as far as process, applicants commonly are the ones that develop and create this traffic studies. Public Works and planning staff evaluate those. In certain circumstances, staff has from time to time hired our own third-party consultant traffic engineer to kind of independently review the applicant-provided traffic study. So that didn't occur in this case. I think we could look at this traffic, additionally to understand, broader functionality. I think one thing, when we consider the proximity along Highway 42, I don't think it would be out of question for Public Works staff to review this a little more, in that we're already doing the Highway 42 study, and staff has a consultant on board right now that is looking at Highway 42 more broadly. And so I don't think it would be a lot of additional work to do some comparison work there for the applicant to look at some of the larger work that has occurred and factor this development in.
And let me just clarify, I think our options, let me try to simplify options. I mean, I think we could take the information and, knowledge of the area and say this is adequate information. Alternatively, you could ask for some additional information, which could include, well, how does this compare to the DLO lofts that was previously approved? And then you could look at the difference in traffic generation and then try to make an assessment of if that is significant. I think a third option is to ask the applicant for a full traffic study that would study this development and the surrounding road network for capacity and functionality, and then we would have more of a definitive answer. Our staff would not do that study. We would review it and make sure that we were comfortable with the assumptions and the conclusions in the study.
Well, thank you both very much from me. That's extremely helpful for our discussion here, I think. I do have one other quick question, not related to traffic, but since I'm on the line here, just a quick check on public dedication. We heard some comments about kind of public's use of these amenity areas, but I'm just checking. My impression or my thinking is that the public dedication for the whole DLO site has already been met, and it's that Nowotny Park area. Yeah.
That's correct. This development is not obligated to do public land dedication under the subdivision code. That being said, there could be a discussion, but my understanding is our Parks Department isn't interested in maintaining a site this small.
Yeah.
And I would just mention that under the Planned Unit Development Code, there are two sections of the code where the Planning Commission and City Council can ask for additional open space dedications beyond the subdivision section. And so we should pull up that code section and reference it if you can, Lisa, and we could look at the criteria. And then when there's a waiver request, that could also be a consideration in waiver requests is open space dedication. So even though the subdivision code wouldn't require it, it can be requested through this type of application, which is a planned unit development. We'll bring that code up because I think that could be significant.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you again. And so is it true though that the land that this proposal is sitting on, that the overall development that included this parcel previously, that dedication, has been met? Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. But so it's section 172880, the open space section of our planned unit development code, and this is not the same kind of open space zoning, so this wouldn't be property to be zoned open space. So it's kind of a parallel term in our PUD code, but basically, in addition to the land dedications in Title 16, which is the subdivision code, requirement for additional open space can be on the following factors: comprehensive development plan, topography, drainage, vegetation, and other physical conditions, anticipated socioeconomic conditions, the type and density of development and employment, and overall need for open space and recreational facilities. It does go on to say that such open space shall be maintained and owned as common open space by the developer, so it doesn't have to be dedicated to the city. So unless the city chooses to accept it as dedication through mutual agreement.
Do we have any additional? Yeah. Anything else, Commissioner Moline? No?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Howe, did you have any questions at this time? All right. Any additional questions for staff? Seeing none then, I will now close the public hearing, and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or other testimony or evidence will be received. With that, I would welcome any commissioner who wants to summarize their current thoughts on it or ask additional questions for us to discuss.
I have a couple discussion items that I'd like to hear from the other commissioners on. And the first one is the outlot alignment issue. I'm struggling a little bit with that, and what do we do with it? And is now the time? So I would be curious to hear everyone's thoughts.
I think it's a great consideration, something we need to talk about, Commissioner Hefner. I guess from my perspective on this property that we have before us, I think I would just like to make sure that we have a tract that's aligned and will be part of a subdivision that can be used in a very usable way as kind of Caledonia Street extended when the other private parcel to the east is developed. And I guess I'm saying that with the understanding that our current traffic guidance, and this might be another discussion point, is whether we want more study there or not. But currently, I think I'm hearing it is that Caledonia extension is not, that's not part of the consideration at this point. So our Public Works Department, it seems like, is currently comfortable with the traffic situation without that extension. So I guess I'm just wanting us to make sure that the property that's before us has the correct outlot dimensions, track dimensions, so that if the development occurs to the east, it aligns properly.
So as I see that issue, the only thing that's preventing us is because that other piece of property is owned by a different person. And so at this time, what we're looking at would include that extension of Caledonia. And while it would be up to a future planning commissioner and or city council to look at it, while they could change it and not align it and not make it work, I would suspect that they would not do that. So
yeah, okay.
Curious about other commissioners' thoughts on that, though. Commissioner.
I agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh, just to follow up, with the three options that Mr. Zuccaro gave us for if we decided to ask for more information on the traffic study from Public Works, if we did not take the route that we have adequate information and we were to ask for Public Works to look into it further, we could add that as one of the things that we would ask them to look into. But from my understanding, Ms. Ritchie made it pretty clear that it was not part of this decision and that this would line. I think that when you were showing us the map, that there was nothing in this development that would prevent Caledonia Street from going through in the future.
Well, so I think you raised two things. I think there's nothing that prevents in the future Caledonia from going through, but a traffic study could look at whether or not the Caledonia connection is needed at this time to support this development, right? So if you looked at it through a traffic study, you could say, you know what, this development doesn't function without that Caledonia connection, or potentially where it breaks down. Or the traffic study could come back and say, the existing network as is will not reach a level of service that is unacceptable. So a traffic study would be needed to evaluate that.
So if you don't mind me just following up.
Sure, as deliberations between us, we're not really asking staff questions at this time, ideally.
All right, I'm sorry. I was trying to summarize what she said, and she spoke in her own words much better than I was going to do. I apologize, but I would just like to say that if we go with the option to on the traffic, which is a comparison to the previous proposal, I like that option, that we include the question about Caledonia Street.
How do other Commissioner Howe, see your hand raised?
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Hefner's deliberate approach to this. And I think when we go back to the criteria for the special review use, the ones that I think I'm most concerned about are the third, fourth, and fifth ones. The third one saying that the use is adequate for the internal efficiency of the proposal, considering the functions of residents, recreation, public access, and safety. And then
The fifth one, I'll skip the fourth one for now. The fifth one says that an adequate amount of proper location of pedestrian walks, malls, and landscaped areas to prevent pedestrian use of vehicular ways and parking spaces and to separate pedestrian walks, malls, and public transportation loading places. So there should be considerate thought to this traffic. Of course, with increased density, as some of the public stated, we want to be careful to maintain the lifestyle that current citizens have. And I think that we need to balance that density with the amenities, pedestrian safety, and landscaping. And I think we need to, as planner Zaccaro mentioned, I think we need to look at it comprehensively. It may not be just that this project needs a traffic study, but this whole area. Do we need to change certain roads to one way? I know there was a thought about a roundabout. Do we need to add crosswalks? So I like that idea that you have, Commissioner Hefner, about looking at this idea. But I think that the problem may be bigger than just the proposal itself. It may be a downtown comprehensive evaluation.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I mean, I think what I heard in a lot of the written comments and the comments we heard tonight was the traffic and safety issues exist today, that there's something there that needs to be looked at today, whether it's traffic calming or better pedestrian or better bike infrastructure. I don't know what it is, but it sounds like the problem exists now. I'm not totally convinced from what we have in front of us that this particular development is going to add a dramatic number of additional cars. But if there's already a problem, adding any number of cars is certainly not going to help. So I guess the idea I'm wondering about is given that just sort of looking at traffic in this area in general isn't exactly within our jurisdiction, as I understand it, I wonder if we send this to council with a note, urging them to consider what's going on with traffic in this area, that people are hitting the pedestrian sign, speeding down a residential street.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I'm looking at too, we've just heard that it's 18 additional bedrooms over what's already been approved. And knowing that when this larger development was originally approved, it was looked at as a medium density walkable neighborhood. So right now I'm wondering whether those 18 bedrooms are going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back and makes the area unlivable. So curious as to what other commissioners are thinking on those numbers in particular.
I'm hearing the commissioners having this discussion. I mean, I'm appreciating this discussion, and I think that to me the density is one of the. I think several of you have phrased this really well. I mean, last week we heard right before this item a whole thing about inclusionary housing and the importance of that for the town. We want to look for ways to allow more people to live here. There's a huge job, work and housing imbalance in Boulder County, and I think our council and others in the city government are looking for ways to address that issue. So I appreciate that we're looking that applicants are looking for ways to add density to properties when they can. I also, at the same time, am concerned that is this the place that makes this so challenging that it's creates sort of a different sense for the community and the people that already live there. So I'm struggling as well. It sounds like with some of you that I appreciate very much that we want to find ways to add housing to our community. We probably all have family members that have left and we wish could come back to town, and so we'd like to look for ways to do that. And but right now I'm not, as Commissioner Hefner shared. I mean, there's a lot of, it sounds like there's considerable issues already, and it's a little worrisome to think about adding that density here at this point. That's kind of where I'm at too.
Thank you, Commissioner Moline. Commissioner Krantz.
Yeah, I get the idea. I think that the density is a big concern, and with the additional number of bedrooms and smaller units, that is great to provide more housing for people in our community, but it also means probably more adults in the units, and that would mean more traffic. So it sounds like with the traffic concerns, the parking concerns, that adding density here might be a problem.
Yeah, I think I partly agree, but would maybe say it a little differently. I think put into a different context, I have no issues with what's being proposed here if the existing traffic and street parking issues that we've heard so much about didn't exist. And I guess my thinking is council and public works ought to take a closer look at that and needs to, do some serious thinking and analysis about how do you address those issues. But I'm not sure that necessarily means we send this particular project back to the drawing board. I think it's a question of addressing pre-existing issues that this particular applicant really isn't responsible for. That they're not responsible for the people who are speeding today. They're not responsible for the middle school traffic. They didn't cause those problems, and I don't want to be unfair to this application because of issues that are pre-existing.
And yeah, one of those issues may be kind of fall back on enforcement. So yeah, if there are some of those issues that have been described to us for speeding, then that may be a very real issue. Sounds like it, and then we turn to our police to look into enforcement on that. So, any additional Commissioner Howe?
Thank you. I think that the problem may be not the density, but the traffic flow. And I think this can be a successful proposal or project. And I think that a lot of people do want something to be developed there. There are some things I like about this proposal that I just want to throw out there to counterbalance some of the things that we've said. I like that this is developing a vacant, narrow parcel in downtown Louisville. I like the design of the proposed buildings. I think they're modern and well designed. Pardon the Johnny Cash quote, but I think it attempts to walk the line between high density residential and long time existing commercial neighbors, which is very difficult to do. And as Commissioner Moline said, affordable housing is included in this package, which we all like to see. Available housing is included. So I think that there are some very valuable items, and I think a lot of people do want this to be successful. With good thought, I think we can achieve that. I'm not convinced that it's the density that is the problem, but it's the traffic flow. My kids went to LMS there, and I know that traffic is an issue, and we have to be very careful. There's pedestrians, and sometimes pedestrians who aren't aware of all the rules because they're small and young, and a lot of traffic going through that area. I think, as Commissioner Hefner said, I'm not sure what the solution is. I know that we want to not stymie this project, but at the same time, I think through careful thought and maybe some other changes, we can make it a success for everybody.
Commissioner Moline.
Yeah, if I could, I really appreciated Commissioner Hefner's comments about the fact of kind of an existing condition and an existing situation, and not really holding that we can't, we can't ask this applicant to deal with the new school traffic, for example. I very much appreciate that. I also think that it could be fair, though, to ask an applicant to do a traffic study that accounts for the new situation, and so that we're sure that what is being proposed now has taken the new situation into account. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I appreciated Commissioner Hefner's comment.
Any additional commissioner thoughts, questions, discussion points? Commissioner Howe, go ahead.
So just a question to Commissioner Hefner. Are you proposing to further this project and then have City Council solve some of these riddles that we're creating tonight? Or do you feel that it's in our judgment to address some of these conditions and solve these problems here?
Yeah, that's the question I'm thinking of too. I think Commissioner Moline's point is well taken, that we certainly have the ability to ask for a more comprehensive look at how does this fit in with what's existing, and how do you make it work in a meaningful way. I worry a little bit that we get beyond our depth when we start looking too much at sort of the broader neighborhood conditions and what's going on with traffic and enforcement and the transportation plan.
I'm wondering about that too, because I'm not aware of something on this scale where we would require a traffic study of the whole neighborhood. If you think of some of the developments in downtown or elsewhere, that does seem like a big and lengthy for time ask, but the timing isn't really my concern. Rather, when we're looking at 18 bedrooms again over what had been approved, is a full neighborhood traffic study for all of Delo, I guess, warranted, but.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also not thinking that we need to do a comprehensive traffic study. I think it still seems to me that a reduction in density would help alleviate the traffic and also a lot of the other problems about the number of dogs, the parking, and issues of use of the park space. Might be a simpler thing to consider. I like that 18 bedrooms isn't as much as we were thinking. It was 50% increase in density. It's good to remember that it's smaller apartments, but I still think that it might be possible to go back to something that was more in line with the neighbors expected when they looked at the old Delo Lofts plat. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners Howe or Moline, nothing additional Commissioner Howe.
I guess just to further the discussion, I'm not sure I can approve this just by looking, just because I don't think it fulfills the criteria for the special review use. And I guess that's...
Can you speak to that directly, please?
Yeah, so once again, going back to the criteria for the special review use, section 17.40.100A. Well, the first one is that the proposed use development is consistent in all respects with the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan, and that it would not be contrary to general welfare and economic prosperity of the city or the immediate neighborhood. I guess I'm concerned that it is that it would change the general welfare of the immediate neighborhood in respect to safety and traffic. And then number 3, that the use development is adequate for the internal efficiency of the proposal, considering the functions of residents, recreation, public access, safety, etc. I think it changes the safety and the ability of and lifestyle of the existing citizens. And then number 5 is that an adequate amount of proper location of pedestrian walks, malls, and landscape spaces to prevent pedestrian use of vehicular ways. Really, they're saying that pedestrians are going to be in the way of cars. And I think that there's some safety issues here. And I'm not sure I'm willing to approve something that will put the existing citizens in harm's way. So I think for those reasons, looking at the criteria, when we look at the proposal and the criteria, not just necessarily what I think needs to be done, but what we can approve as a planning commission. I'm not sure I can approve it based on what we're being asked to do today.
Thank you, Director Zucchero.
Yeah, and so let me talk a little bit about our code structure, because it's very confusing, so I'm just going to apologize for our code structure. But the special review use in this case is specifically related to a request to not have ground floor retail. And so it's not, those criteria aren't relevant to the overall development. So we have to look at the PUD criteria. And there are a lot of PUD criteria. So, that's if you want to reference the appendix in the staff report. I think some of the things you spoke to may be relevant to those criteria. So I'd recommend we look at the appendix in the staff report. Again, the SRU, our code says that if you don't want to have ground floor retail on a vertical mixed-use building, you have to request basically a waiver and justify it through the special review use.
Yeah, that's correct. So we can pull up the PUD criteria in the code if that's helpful, but the criteria that Commissioner Howe is referencing should be applied to the retail on ground floor request.
So, Commissioner Howe, do you have your hand up? Do you want to go?
And isn't that a request from the project, is to use the ground floor for residential instead of commercial?
That's correct.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. Is that,
so.
And by doing so, you increase the density of the project. So if you were to see that all 5 of those were to be met, then you would say it's okay to change the ground floor to residential use, and thus increasing the density. So I guess that's what my train of thought was.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I think in that context, it could make sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Hefter.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, or at least share my current thinking, which is I see the traffic additions here as marginal compared to what was previously approved. And because of that, I would be inclined to recommend this on to council, but with a condition that the applicant come before council with a more robust traffic study, whether that's a full study or something that just considers more of the context than the letter we have before us today. And then also maybe a note to council expressing our pretty serious concerns about what the existing traffic situation is with the street parking and the speeding and the middle school and the other issues we've been through, and suggesting they take a look at that and engage another process to take a closer look at that in conjunction with this application. So that's my current thinking. I don't know if that's a viable path forward, but that's where I'm at.
That does sound of interest to me, trying to come up with wording for a condition on additional information for council when they present to council. I also would want to note, again, as Commissioner Moline pointed out, this would be the first project that had addressed our requirements for affordable housing. And they're not required to, though. This is on a voluntary basis, and I find that rather compelling as far as precedent for other future projects. So something else where I'm leaning towards, if we can look at this have the traffic issues have more responses for city council's questions in the future available. Or I'd be more inclined to find myself in support of it.
I'm leaning in the same direction.
All right. Do we have any additional commissioner questions, deliberation, discussion at this time? Seeing Commissioner Howe.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. I would prefer to solve some of the problems at this level, but I guess it could be solved in other levels as well. Would anyone else like to include in that condition considering changing the pickleball to maybe a land dedication or land donation, as Mr. Zaccaro had alluded to?
So what I'm hearing is that we don't want that as a city. We don't want to have to maintain that in perpetuity, generally speaking.
I would also say it wasn't part of the application, so it wasn't specifically addressed. So I think if that's something that you would like to recommend, we would need to have some discussions internally with our Parks and Recreation Department to understand kind of the impact and if that's something that they would like to actually dedicate publicly, or if it's just for use by the public. That wouldn't require a dedication, but it could require public use.
Great, and for me, as far as whether it's pickleball or other alternate use, I'll leave that up to the developer and ultimately the HOA, the people who live there. So I would be comfortable with leaving it as is personally, but we'll come out with other
I was going to agree with that sentiment, and I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the level of detail we need to look at, and B, I would assume if the pickleball isn't working out, it's not a dramatic effort to replace it with something else.
Okay, additional, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm still concerned about the lack of, the concerns that the neighbors have about the lack of green space. And if it can't be solved with the pickleball, I guess I would agree with Commissioner Howe that it would be nice to have more green space. I'm not sure if that's how you put it, but it doesn't have to, I don't necessarily think it would have to be owned by the city, because I think Mr. Zaccaro mentioned the idea of common open space that could be accessed by the public. So I'm not sure if we want to talk more, about the park space, but I also wanted to bring up the issue of the commercial space. And I know nobody else was really talking about it, but I am still concerned about the viability of a large commercial space. And the previous proposal, the change is that we're going to have live-work units, and I know this isn't part of your proposal, but would it be possible to have separate lofts from to reduce the density by having separate lofts as opposed to making that first floor all
So,
residential?
Unfortunately, we can't ask them questions at
Okay.
this time.
I'm sorry.
No,
That's okay.
that's fine. But because we've closed the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about I guess I would say I'm concerned about the viability of the commercial space and wondered if we could talk about that some more.
Oh, we can discuss that all we want, yes. So other commissioners, yeah, let's open that discussion point. Nothing?
I'll just say, I mean, as I understand it, the commercial was included because the city requires it.
Right.
I share your concern that it may not be as well utilized as we would hope. I suppose we could encourage the applicant to ask for a waiver from the commercial space requirement, but it's our requirement.
Or I was thinking also of of wondering if a smaller space would be more viable, because the rent would be really high on a large space, and it would encourage small businesses because we're moving from, like, I can't remember, was it 8 small spaces to 1 large space? And I was wondering if small spaces are more viable because the rent is less.
So if I remember correctly, it was a roughly 5,000 square foot, little less square, 4,000 and 3,000, 2,000. All right.
1,575.
1,517 square feet. Thank you, Lisa. So that's small. That's about as small as it gets. So I guess also at that point too, if we were to try to come up with an alternate on that, ultimately we'd be looking at more density, right? Because that's single story at that point, or 1.5 height, I think it was. I don't hear cries for increased density. So my thought is at this point, perhaps the applicant will work with city council on something different for that. But right now, what we're looking at tonight is, are we okay with this additional 18 bedrooms, given the picture of the proposal? So Any additional commissioner thoughts, comments on that issue or any other issues? Seeing none, I would then welcome a motion.
Up here.
Okay, we're working on that right now.
So I would move the approval of resolution number 9, series 2022, recommending approval of a planned unit development amendment to allow construction of 2 33-unit multifamily structures and a 1,575 square foot commercial structure, a special review use to allow residential uses on the ground floor, and a plat for the property located on the southeast corner of Griffith Street and Cannon Street, with the condition that when the applicant appears before City Council, that the applicant presents a more robust traffic study that takes into account some of our discussion tonight.
And the current staff conditions?
And the current staff conditions, and with a note to council to please consider the existing traffic conditions in the area and whether there may be remedies through public works or enforcement or the transportation plan or traffic calming or any of those items within city council's purview that may be appropriate to consider here.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion on the floor. A roll call vote, please. Unless there's any additional, yeah. Oh, we need a second, yes.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Moline. All right. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Brown Eyes.
Yes.
Commissioner Howe.
No.
Commissioner Krantz.
No, would it be possible to make a friendly amendment?
We needed to do that before
Okay.
we started the roll call. We could.
I'll
we
stick
could
with no.
walk it back. Why don't we, do you really want it? Friendly amendment, propose a friendly amendment?
As
We're
the
in
sponsor of the motion, I'd like to hear it.
Okay.
I was going to ask that the density be reduced to what is I think it was a 25 FAR, 0.25.
So it's up to the person who proposed the motion
Okay.
to determine whether it's friendly or not. Typically, we would all want to discuss that a little
Okay.
further. So at this
Okay,
point,
I'd probably
we've opened up a can of worms.
Yeah, maybe we need to have discussion on the amendment before we move forward with the
Well, you
with the
can
motion.
reject that as a friendly amendment. Is
Well,
that not so friendly amendment?
yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of it.
Yeah, okay, so that's your prerogative at that point too. We'll continue on then, so I'm sorry.
That's fine. Do we continue with the roll call vote then?
Yeah, please.
I'll just say no, but
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Commissioner Hefner.
Yes.
3 in favor, 2 opposed.
Thank you. The motion carries. And I think you've heard a lot from the people who live in the area, so I hope you all be able to address those in front of City Council. All right, with that, we'll take another 5-minute break, maybe 7? 5. Let's stick with 5 and move to our next agenda item.
Recording stopped.
I'm not hearing them yet.
Recording in progress.
Okay. All right.
If we can reconvene, please. Let's see here. I will now open the public hearing on a request for a planned unit development, consideration of a planned unit development for a 15,597 square foot industrial flex building at 602 Taylor Avenue in the Colorado Technological Center. The purpose of the hearing is to receive evidence regarding the application, materials, and provide a public forum for all interested parties who wish to comment on this request before Planning Commission. The procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. First, there will be a presentation and testimony by city staff, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to staff. Next, we'll have a presentation and testimony by the applicant, followed by questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant. After these two presentations, members of the public who have joined this meeting in person, by computer, or telephone may speak regarding the application. Anyone who would like to speak is asked to use the raise hand function if participating by computer, or *9 if calling in by telephone. Comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person. The purpose of the public comment is to receive public testimony and not a forum for debate or dialogue. Commenters are encouraged to raise pertinent issues and may ask questions for clarity. However, these questions will not be directly answered during the public comment period. The applicant and staff will then be allowed to make a closing statement. I will then close the public hearing, and no further testimony or other evidence will be received unless the commission decides to reopen the hearing. The Planning Commission will discuss the matter and may approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a future meeting. Public hearings are recorded for the public record. All testimony must be presented after stating your full name and address. Does anyone participating in this hearing object to the procedure I've described? Seeing none, we'll start with notification.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the item was accurately noticed, and it was accurately noticed and continued from June 9th to tonight, June 23rd.
Thank you. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you. So good evening, Commissioners. My name is Elizabeth K. Marchetti. I'm a senior planner on behalf of city staff. Thank you again for the opportunity to present to you tonight. Also here is Ms. Deepika Avanti, the applicant and owner of the property. She'll also be making a brief statement and is available to answer any of your questions. The item before you tonight is Resolution Number 10, Series 2022, which recommends approval of a planned unit development at 602 Taylor Avenue that would allow an industrial flex building at 602 Taylor Avenue in the Colorado Technological Center. I'll review the key details of the proposal, explain the two proposed waivers and staff's analysis and recommendations for both, and finish with a final recommendation. So to begin, this is an aerial photo of the site as shown in the red rectangle. The site is approximately 1.2 acres in size and is zoned industrial. Taylor Avenue bounds the site on the west here, while existing commercial buildings bound the site on the south and east sides. Vacant land bounds the property to the north. The land was subdivided via the Colorado Technological Center filing number 1 plat in 1979. This image is from page 2 of the PUD and shows the proposed layout of the site. The building is located in the north half of the lot, and access to the 15,597 square foot structure is via one driveway located near the center of the site. A stormwater pond is located at the southwest corner of the site. There are 38 outdoor and 2 indoor parking spaces, along with 4 bicycle parking spaces. 5 more automobile spaces are provided than required so that the building could accommodate an office use as a potential tenant. The employee amenity area is towards the northwest corner of the site, and, pardon me, my mouse. And is close to the walkway, which goes around the west, the north, and the east sides of the building. This provides pedestrians with a pathway that doesn't conflict with the loading areas. The two main entrances are located at the west end and at the southeast corner of the building. The parking lot is configured with one-way drive aisles, and the deeply recessed loading zone in the middle of the building all work to safely separate pedestrians from autos. There is a truck turnaround space at the southern side of the parking area, and the dumpster is planned at the southeast corner of the parking lot. The site layout complies with the Industrial Development Design Standards and Guidelines, or IDDSG, by meeting all setback, height, parking, internal circulation, and grading and drainage standards, except for the waivers noted. The proposed architecture nearly matches that of the building to the south, which Ms. Avanti also developed. The proposed structure would be made of CMU blocks with metal doors and parapet caps, and steel canopies and loading doors. This image was taken from a site visit looking at the existing structure that is south of the proposed site. This is the one that Ms. Avanti has already developed. The roofline is varied, and the color palette is comprised of light tan with orange accents, just like this building to the south. The proposed architecture and materials comply with the aesthetic standards of the IDDSG. The proposed landscaping plan also complies with the IDDSG standards, even with one requested waiver. This image is from page 6 of the PUD and depicts how the plant materials are grouped according to watering needs. This next image is also from page 6 and shows the location of all proposed plant material. The south and west side landscaping will effectively screen, the parking lot from the view of the public. Raised planter beds frame the west side entry, and trees and shrubs provide shade and privacy for the employee area north of the west side entry. More than double the required amount of landscaping is proposed for the 5.3-foot wide planting area along the north property line. It's also worth noting that the required emergency vehicle turnaround space in the south end of the lot is proposed to be covered with grasscrete so that live plant material will grow there, and it contributes to the overall grand total of landscaping required and provides more pervious space. It is also not open to the public. It's not available for parking of any kind, and snow storage is also not permitted in that area. Now for the discussion of the first waiver from the site access and vehicular circulation requirements at 2.1.1.f of the IDDSG. This standard requires that driveways on opposite sides of a street either align exactly or be offset by at least 75 feet. This image is a snapshot from page 2 of the PUD, and I've rotated it so that north is to your right. The proposed driveway for the subject site is indicated by the red arrow, and the existing driveways across Taylor Avenue are indicated by the green arrows here, here, and here. The 3 existing driveways were allowed through previous PUDs to be constructed without complying with 2.1.1.g of the IDDSG, which requires a minimum separation of 75 feet between drive aisles. The furthest 2 of them are apart from each other is approximately 104 feet. The closest is 35 feet. The existing driveway pattern makes it impossible for the proposed driveway to achieve a full 75-foot offset. Forcing the proposed development to comply with 2.1.1.f by aligning the drive exactly across the street with one of the existing drives would have made it very difficult to meet other key design standards, such as internal circulation, separation of pedestrians from autos, setback requirements, and in particular, stormwater drainage system design. The proposed driveway is offset from the nearest driveway by 14 feet and by 63 feet from the next closest. Planning staff and public works staff find that the proposed alignment of the driveway successfully achieves good access for the site and doesn't conflict with across-the-street access points. Staff recommends approval of this waiver request. Now for the second waiver request. This image is a close-up of the north property line and the proposed 5.3-foot wide planting area. 5.2.A.1 of the IDDSG requires a 10-foot wide planting bed along the perimeter of a lot that abuts private property. The applicant is proposing that 5 of that 10 feet be used for a sidewalk that serves the main entrances and emergency exits, and that the remaining space be used for a narrower planting bed with very dense landscaping. The standard calls for 7 trees along a lot line of this length, and 13 are being proposed, along with more than 70 shrubs and ground covers. Appropriate tree and shrub species are proposed that will do well on a cool north side of a building. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed waiver due to the abundant proposed landscaping. Staff has provided an analysis of and recommendations on the application and its 2 waivers as they relate to the PUD criteria in section 17.28.120 of the Louisville Municipal Code and with the IDDSG. The Commission now has options. It may agree with staff's recommendation or reach its own conclusion. Therefore, staff recommends approval of Resolution 10, Series 2022, regarding a PUD for a flex industrial building at 602 Taylor Avenue. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. As we move into questions of staff, I would also make sure we have any disclosures, make sure we don't have any disclosures at this time of other commissioners. All right. Any questions? I can see him on yours and not mine. All right. Commissioner Moline, question.
Just a quick one. Thank you, Elizabeth. I am wondering if you had discussions with the applicant about could they still achieve, this is with respect to that second waiver request. Could they still achieve a 10-foot landscaping bed by scooching the building south, I think it was maybe? And I'm just wondering if you had discussions along those lines with the applicant.
We did. What's proposed this evening is after about 3 or 4 iterations of the site layout. And they've already reduced their building footprint pretty significantly to make the circulation work relative to the loading zone area to accommodate trucks and pedestrians safely and separate those uses. So we did have quite a bit of conversation about their ability to scooch the building further south. The problem becomes they run out of space to accommodate larger scale vehicles such as fire trucks. And their ability to achieve even 18-foot wide one-way drive aisles, they would be losing square footage in the building is the punchline.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's so helpful to hear that you've had some discussions with them about that. So thank you.
Sure thing.
Additional questions of staff? Seeing none. Did you have any? No.
Sorry, I just had one quick question. Can you describe the area where the grasscrete is going to be put in, and is that in place? Is that replacing an area that would have otherwise been grass, or an area that would have otherwise been concrete?
Can we depict my slide? Thank you. So close. Yes. It was the very first time it was proposed to the city, it was concrete. And in working with the applicant, we had a fantastic discussion about ways to increase the pervious surface and the amount of landscaping on the site. And they came up with that suggestion that, hey, Let's coordinate and collaborate with the fire department and find out if they have any heartburn with turning what is a space really meant for them to be able to safely get their trucks in and out of there in an emergency scenario. The fire department was happy to see the space go into Grasscrete. There's other examples of this in town that the fire department is happy to see happen, and their only stipulation was, again, that it not be allowed for snow storage. So it's a happy, kind of a happy accident that we've got a multi-purpose space that's serving, multiple needs and is not adding to heat island while we're at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, seeing no additional commissioner questions for staff, at this time I'd invite the applicant up for presentation. If you can begin with name and address.
Hi, City of Louisville Commissioners. I am Deepika Vanti, address 698 Dixon Road, Boulder, Colorado. And I'm the owner of the proposed Motherlode building at 602 Taylor in the Colorado Technology Center. So thank you for being here tonight. It's been a long night, and the last week was a long night too. So, and listening to our proposal. This will be our third small flex building in the CTC Center, and it will be split into the two 8,000 square foot units to support small local businesses from the community. About 97% of all our current tenants live near Louisville's Superior area. They are grateful to be living and working in such close proximity. Many of our tenants even bike to work and go to lunch in Louisville. Since 2008, 93% of our local startup entrepreneurs have succeeded in growing their businesses, and they're still in business. So that's quite a success rate. They often begin with smaller spaces in our first building and then graduate to larger spaces, such as what will be in this building. Not every small business can afford to buy a condo or a building, so our goal is providing quality, economical rental spaces for entrepreneurs. And each building we have designed with lots of interior light and opening windows for tenants to thrive with their businesses. We were originally inspired to build this quality fashion from experiencing kind of dark, dreary warehouse spacing and flex spaces in the Front Range. And we felt people deserve to work in spaces that support their physical and mental well-being. So we wish to make our building aesthetically pleasing out of several colors of block, plus exceptional landscaping. And we take pride in having some of the best xeriscaping with lots of perennial flowers in the park. Tenants love being with all the roses and sitting at the picnic tables outside under the trees for shade, and also under a sail awning at this building. We were excited to bring this vision to life for the small businesses of Louisville. So thank you for your supporting us to provide rental spaces for our local entrepreneurs. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. If you could stay up there, we'll see if we have questions for you. Commissioner, questions for the applicant? Okay.
Just for curiosity's sake, could you give us a sense of who your tenants are?
Well, in an industrial park, you have a lot of like research and development and manufacturing. So it's like this one tenant, he recycles medical devices that are really cool. A lot of them, they've made inventions for technology. Like one tenant is able to measure the use of electricity, that people can go and find out how much electricity this portion of their building is using and this portion and change it around. I have a wind research and development on wind energy. So they're just fascinating. I love supporting them. And
Very interesting.
Yeah, my rents are low and most people come to me direct. So I've helped out a lot of tenants stay in business and just really support them, not like management companies would do. And that's why the success rate has been 93%.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open up for public comment. I do not see anybody in the room, I believe that.
We do have a
We do
hand
have-
raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Joshua Cooperman, you might need to unmute on your end. There you go.
Hello,
Hello, yeah, we can hear you.
this is Josh Cooperman. I live at 216 Griffith Street. I would just like to make a few small comments. First of all, I'd like to say I really appreciate the perspective that the developer has given about the development. I think their perspective and their ideals and their goals are really excellent. And I really appreciate all the enhanced landscaping that they would like to do. I'd like to make a few little comments. So first of all, regarding the grasscrete, again, I think that's a great idea to have a pervious surface. But I think it is not appropriate to count that towards the land dedication for the site. That is still, it's not a natural environment. It's still partially paved over grass. And I think we would be setting a very poor precedent if we allowed that to be counted as part of a land dedication. I was a little confused because in the packet, it suggests that that is a truck turnaround area, whereas in the presentation, it sounded more like an emergency vehicle space. But in either case, I still think it would be a very bad precedent to count that towards an open space or a land dedication. Secondly, I know it's only a few parking spots, but I would like to suggest that we not allow anything above the minimum required number. I don't think we need any more parking spots out there than the minimum. And then the last thing, which hasn't been touched on, as far as I could tell from the lighting plan, the plan is to put in outdoor lights at 3,000 Kelvin. I would like to suggest that you recommend a cooler temperature. When the City Council hopefully approves a dark sky lighting ordinance next year, 3,000 Kelvin lamps will be disallowed. And so it would be in the best interest of the developer to put in something cooler. I believe 2,700 Kelvin is the upper limit that's being considered. And currently the International Dark Sky Association is recommending an upper limit of 2,200 Kelvin. Those are all my comments. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cooperman.
Do I get to reply?
Yeah, actually, we have no additional public comment at this time, right?
That's correct.
Great, thank you. And then, so right now, we're actually shifting gears and we're opening it up for you to provide an applicant response and closing statement.
Yes. Right now, the parking is based on flex space. That's 2 parking spaces per 1,000 feet. Right now, the building has no tenant finish and 0 square foot of office. And there could be a tenant that needs an office, and offices are 4 parking spaces per 1,000, which I won't know until companies come what they will need to have, but it's not usual. I mean, if this was a warehouse, then you'd have no office. But this is not a warehouse, I need a little bit of extra parking in case somebody needs an office. Thank you. And then, yeah, the grasscrete, that was the fire department has to turn around, but they rarely, if ever, will use that. So we had to come to a compromise of being able to have green in the grasscrete and have an emergency turnaround that may or may never get used by the fire department, but is necessary for the fire department. And then the electricity, my engineer has followed all the rules exactly, and that's how the electricity currently is with the lighting.
As far as the grasscrete and contributing to the open space dedication, can you clarify that?
there's 25.1% of landscaping, right? And but that doesn't include the extra dense landscaping on the north side, which is almost double the requirement that makes up for the sidewalk. And the sidewalk had to be like the emergency fire lane to the road. So but almost every building we have has more landscaping and more beautiful landscaping than any buildings I've seen out at the Colorado Tech Center. I feel like we have really achieved optimal landscaping, and we're 1% over, or 0.1% over.
Do we have any additional commissioner questions of the applicant? Commissioner Howe.
Hi, Ms. Avanti. Thanks for your proposal, and I think your ambitions are genuine there. Regarding the waiver that you're asking for the north landscaping requirements, it seems like you have a narrower plot of landscaping, and thus you have many more trees. When I think of more trees, I think of less reach of the trees and less shade. As we've mentioned before, the concern of heat island. What are your thoughts on that, having less trees and more shade, or more trees and less shade?
We have more trees on the north. We have more trees everywhere. We have trees in the middle of the parking lot in the islands also, right? Curtis, you want to address that?
So Commissioner Howe, can you have a clarification?
This is the civil engineer. He
Okay,
can
great.
say more, but yeah, all the islands have trees also in the parking lot.
Sure, if you'd like to speak to it, that'd be great. Name and address, please.
Curtis Kostecki, Creative Civil Solutions, 1749 Preston Drive, Longmont, Colorado. In terms of the tree island and the heat island effects, the trees that are proposed in the islands in the parking lot are quite extensive. On the north side of the building, although it is a narrower space, most trees aren't going to thrive in even a 10-foot wide setback. So what was designed was very narrow columnar trees in a very dense spacing to achieve the same kind of general shading that you'd have from larger shade trees as the sun hits that area. If we went with 35-foot on center spacing with 10-foot canopies, you wouldn't get as much shade as you would out of a tighter series of columnars as proposed.
Commissioner Howe?
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional commissioner questions? Commissioner Krantz.
I didn't quite understand whether that was the Grasscrete area, if our caller, Mr. Cooperman, was correct, that was included in the
Grass
public
Creek
land
is
dedication.
not public
Fire.
land dedication. It would be
What do you call
open
it?
landscape requirements.
Oh,
So
landscape requirement,
it
okay.
is the Grass Creek area is counted towards the landscaping criteria.
And how significant is that in terms of the overall landscaping area? Because I do.
I can make a guess. 0.3% of the overall requirement was met with that. It's not a very large amount. It's a fairly small area relative to the overall parking lot size. But again, it didn't make sense to keep that as seldomly used pavement when we could add it as a landscaping feature and increase infiltration and site permeability as well.
So that was part of the waiver request to have, was that a waiver request to
No,
have
that's
less
not a waiver
landscaping? Or
request.
just counting towards the landscaping area?
That's, Grass Creek paving is counting towards the landscaping requirements. It was not deemed by staff when we discussed with them as being a material that was unsuitable to be counted as landscape.
I got it, thank you.
Thank you. Additional Commissioner Hefner.
Yeah, I don't know if you're the right person to ask, but would you be open to considering outdoor lighting at the slightly, I think it's actually a slightly warmer color temperature of 2700 or 2200 than what's proposed in the application?
I'd have to talk with the client about that. I can't answer it, but you can ask her. I can try to explain it real quick for her. Deepika, what they're asking is the brighter temperatures up at the 5,000 degree Kelvin which is really high up there, is like natural daylight. As you get to the lower numbers, like in the 2700 range, the lighting becomes a little more yellowed in color, a little more orangish in color, and it doesn't reflect up into the sky at night as much off of pavement surfaces. If you're open to that, they're asking if you would be willing to lower the color range from like a mid yellowish to more of a orangish range. Is that a general?
Yeah,
Boy, I think that's right. That's
that's
not my
accurate.
area either.
From
But
what I knew, our lighting engineer that did the photometrics, we based our photometrics on what Louisville required us to do. I mean, we can do it, but I don't know if we're breaking Louisville's codes. She has followed the codes exactly, and if yes,
code
if it
doesn't-
doesn't break the codes, then
Yeah.
we can change it. I guess we can go back and change it. But that she's been very diligent following every code. We have like 3 zones for the electric cars in the parking lot, and she found 3 different Louisville laws on how to comply to that, and every law was different. There were actually 3 different codes, and none of them matched. So it's been kind of difficult.
times. All right, thank you.
But yeah, I guess if it doesn't break the law, we can do that.
Thank you, and that's what we're, generally, yes, it's a nuance, for sure, so. All right, seeing no additional public comment, and we have a staff, thank you very much for the presentation. Staff response and closing statement.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful questions and comments. There is language to the discussion regarding the grasscrete. There is language in the IDDSG regarding landscaping materials that discusses the use of pervious surfaces, and that those pervious surfaces can be counted towards overall landscaping minimum quantities. So we use that as our guidance regarding the emergency vehicle turnaround space that's going to be grass-created. I believe the applicant was accurate in describing how we worked with them to achieve the parking count that they did in order to secure the kind of flexibility that she's hoping to have in her business. She is needing to offer what appears to be more spaces than are required. But when you combine the ratios of flex with office, you get this larger number. And again, that was something that staff was comfortable with. We didn't want to prevent a business owner who was specifically looking for flexibility in the use of her space in the future from being able to achieve that. And I think it's a great compromise if the applicant is willing to look at her photometric plan again and get that Kelvin number down. I think that's a great idea, and we think that's a step in the right direction. So thank you.
Great.
And if I may, I just wanted to add maybe one or two clarifications. One is that while we're recommending counting the grasscrete towards the landscaping area and the landscaping requirement, from staff point of view, we wouldn't accept that if that was the predominance of the impervious surface or the landscaping. I think having small amounts of it makes sense where it's logical and there's win-win situations, but it should be a small part of the overall project. We wouldn't say that you could do your entire landscaping area with that type of surface. It would have to make sense to use it. And just to be clear, we don't have a Kelvin requirement so there's no code or design requirement, but as we've been studying dark sky lighting standards, we've been encouraging applicants to be 3,000 Kelvin or lower. And so that's the maximum that we would accept, and 2,700 is a really great standard. The warmer you get, it is intended to be more friendly to the dark sky as well as wildlife.
Great. Thank you very much. I will now close the public hearing, and the planning commissioners will deliberate on the evidence presented. During deliberations, no further public comment or testimony or evidence will be received. Who would like to begin? Any thoughts? Quick thoughts. Let's go around the room. Commissioner Moline.
Sure. I'm going to be in support of this. I appreciate the proposal here. I also very much appreciate the applicant's willingness to consider the Kelvin change in the lighting. And I don't know if we need to make that a small condition on this, but I'm excited about this. I'm in support, and the staff explanation about the waivers is compelling to me, so I'm understanding and supportive of those as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Howe.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Moline. I think that this has been a successful design in the past, and I think it's a good service to the local economy and businesses. So I think that we should add a condition to have meet the dark sky requirements for the lights, and I think that would enable this to continue on to City Council rather than having them rework anything.
I'm kind of leaning against that as a condition because I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. For me, the applicant has indicated that they're going to look into it. So I think for us, as a note in the minutes that goes to City Council, I expect that it might be addressed by then. So are you okay without the condition?
I can be, yeah, I can be.
All
Maybe
right.
talk just a little bit longer, just how it feels like cart before horse, Steve.
Oh, so we're saying let's meet a standard that we haven't adopted yet?
Oh, got ya. Okay.
I'm absolutely in favor of it. It is the right thing to do, and I look forward to it. Dark sky has been discussed for at least 8 years now. So I look forward to that finally coming to fruition, but for now.
Okay, very, very fair. Thanks, Chair Bronice.
Certainly. Commissioner Hefner, any thoughts?
I don't have much to add, and I also don't feel a need for a condition.
Commissioner Krantz.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It sounds like if it sounds like it would be to the benefit of the applicant to comply with something because it would it would help. They won't have to retrofit the lights. No, there's no requirement to retrofit it, but it would be good if they could consider that without a condition.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Howe, was there any additional thoughts on this? Condition, no condition? No?
No, I would entertain a motion. Chairman, would you entertain a motion for approval for that?
After I indicate my agreement with with approving it, yes. Thank you. Commissioner Howe with the motion second.
Did we hear the motion?
Oh,
I can read it if you want me to.
Yeah.
Motion for resolution number 10, series 2022, a resolution recommending approval of a planned unit development to allow construction of a 17,597 square foot industrial flex building located at 602 Taylor Avenue.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please. Lisa, could we?
Here we go. I can do
for
it.
A roll call vote, please.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem. Yep,
Commissioner Moline.
Change the chairs. Different role.
Forgot about that. Commissioner Moline.
Yes.
Commissioner Howe.
Yes.
Commissioner Hefner.
Yes.
Commissioner Krantz.
Yes.
Chair Bronice.
Yes. Motion carries. Good luck moving forward.
Thanks
you
for
all.
your patience.
Yes, and moving forward to this week. All right, do we have any additional Planning Commission comments? Seeing none, I would go ahead for staff comments.
No comments other than our advanced agenda items for July 14th. So we do have a fence code consideration related to kind of fire-resistant fence design that we'd like to propose. The Red Tail Ridge preliminary and final plat will not make it in July, so that's been pushed back to a potential August hearing date at this point.
Thank you for that update.
Oh, sorry. And then the inclusionary that was continued. not continued, but tabled. We'll notice it for July 14th as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Howe.
Planning Director Zakara, I was just going to mention that I know that that decision on the fences involves a lot of HOAs. Is there any legal aspect of that that we need to take care of ahead of time?
Yeah, well, yes. And so let me explain what we're doing too. That's a great question. So staff's planning to come forward with this. This is a very targeted, limited amendment. Staff is working with all of the HOAs and all of the liaisons to all the neighbors in all of the neighborhoods that were affected by the fire about potentially changing their PUD fence standards more broadly. And so that could be design standards as well as additional fire resistance standards that those neighborhoods want to bring forward. And we don't know if we're going to bring those forward neighborhood by neighborhood, or we might bring groups of them together with future amendments. So that's in the works in the background. Lisa's actually heading that up if you want to add anything else.
No, I think, Director, that's a great explanation. So neighborhood by neighborhood, we might be looking at design changes, but this ordinance is really intended to, the scope is to allow exemptions to PUD requirements if a PUD requires a wood fence in a certain circumstance as it connects to your home, that there'd be an exemption to allow a non-combustible material to break the chain of transmission. So that would be citywide, applied to any PUD, and that will be considered next month.
Thank you. With that, any additional questions?
One last thing. I just wanted to acknowledge that staff heard the request made by the commission the last time they met, asking for some guidance or maybe some time for training, a moment of reminder about rules of order. And so we do plan on talking about that, and with you, Chair, about making some time in the near future to have that happen for the group.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
I think we all look forward to it. All right, anything additional? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you for appeasing the virtual